Good evening. Well, 5 people are dead this evening following another day of violence. 4 were shot at a bookmaker shop in the Ormer Road area of Belfast this afternoon. And this morning, a man who the police say was a terrorist was killed during an attempted ambush on a part-time member of the UDR. The Ormer Road shootings were claimed by the UFF. Today's deaths come as the controversy continues over the killing of 3 people at Sinn Féin's offices in West Belfast yesterday. We have a number of reports. First, that shooting on the Ormer Road.
In a few moments, gunmen turned a busy betting shop into a scene of multiple murder and injury. The killings in the nationalist Lower Ormer Road area happened at about 2:30. 2 gunmen burst into Sean Graham's bookmakers and opened fire with a rifle and a handgun.
I was frozen, and I thought it was someone coming in to hold the place up and get down on the ground, what you have, and get your money out, but they were all laying speckled and the blood was splashing everywhere.
Other people outside spoke of hearing several bursts of gunfire.
They said that 2 men walked out of University Street and walked straight into a bookmaker's shop and shot all around them indiscriminately. Well, there was a lot of customers in the shop. Most of them did for cover, but the men still opened fire.
The emergency services reached the scene within a few minutes. As well as the dead and the dying, they had to deal with up to 20 injured.
It was very crowded and very unpleasant, but the ambulance crews were working fairly calmly, identifying the priorities, and I think it would probably be safe to say that the most seriously injured people were probably treated and removed within the first 5 minutes or so of arrival of the ambulances.
As the injured were carried out to waiting ambulances, a local priest was inside giving the last rites to several of the victims.
All I know is that there are people dead. I got to the scene, I was talking to several of them before they died, but there are too many dead.
Crowds of anxious local people, including relatives and friends, gathered nearby. With senior colleagues, the RUC Chief Constable went to the scene of the killings. He called the attack barbarous and unacceptable.
People are frightened, and people have a right to be frightened. And my sympathy and that of the security forces is with them. What I can say to them is that we're not sitting idly by. We are making arrests for crime, making arrests for murder, making arrests for explosives every day across this province, and we'll continue to do it.
Other senior officers urged the community to keep calm after what they called a horrendous provocation.
It's utterly casual violence, without aim, without purpose, other than to stir up hatred and to cause pain and suffering in the community. It's an appalling act of indiscriminate violence.
Within the last few minutes, the outlawed Ulster freedom fighters have said they carried out the gun attack.
Well, that statement from the UFF was issued within the past few minutes. It said the attack had been carried out in what it called one of the IRA's most active areas. And the statement ended with the words, "Remember Tiban," a reference to the IRA murder of 8 men there last month.
The attack on the bookmaker shop happened 3 hours after a man was shot dead near Balik in Fermanagh. The police say he was a terrorist who was taking part in an attack on a part-time member of the UDR. 2 men have been arrested during a follow-up operation in County Donegal. Noreen Erskine has been to the scene.
The farmhouse of a man who lives at Scardon's Upper, just 100 yards from the Fermanagh border with the Republic, was taken over by a gang of masked gunmen on Monday night. The owner, a middle-aged man who lives on his own, was held captive. This morning, a dog warden, who is also a part-time UDR soldier, drove to the house in response to a call about a dog. After he had driven his yellow van into the farmyard, a number of shots were fired at him. He was wounded in the legs, but managed to return fire. In the exchange of shots, 1 member of the gang was killed. By late this afternoon, the body of a man wearing a balaclava mask was still lying in the farmyard. The UDR man was taken to hospital with leg injuries. 2 men arrested in County Donegal a short time after the ambush are being questioned by the Gardaí at Ballyshannon. A car found abandoned near the scene of the shooting on the northern side of the border is being examined by forensic experts.
Meanwhile, today the controversy has continued over yesterday's attack in West Belfast. The widow of one of the 3 men killed in the Sinn Féin office has called for no retaliation for his murder. 21-year-old Michael O'Dwyer from Linview Court had gone to the office with his young son. The 2-year-old boy witnessed his father being murdered.
Just keeps going through his head. Keeps on in his head. He knows what happened. Keeps on about his daddy.
Does he say anything about it?
He just keeps on going bang, the shooting. Daddy fell out of the chair. Bang, bang. Keeps on saying his ears are sore. Every time his ears are sore, that's when he comes off with a story.
Following the attack which killed Mrs O'Dwyer's husband and 2 others, Sinn Féin at a news conference have produced a bag they say was carried by the off-duty police officer who shot them. Inside the bag were 3 spent cartridges, and Sinn Féin also drew attention to a hole in the bag apparently caused by a shotgun blast. Brian Rowan was at the news conference.
At around lunchtime today, the Sinn Féin president and West Belfast MP Gerry Adams spoke to reporters and gave his detailed response to yesterday's killings. Under government restrictions, we can't broadcast his voice, but in a statement, Mr Adams accused the RUC of engaging in a cynical damage limitation exercise. He said he was compiling a file on the shootings, which he said would be sent to reputable international human rights agencies. The statement also said that it now appeared that only 1 person entered the Sinn Féin office and carried out the shootings. There was a report from the scene yesterday which spoke of 2, but the Sinn Féin MP added that it was difficult at this stage to say whether there was an accomplice outside. Mr Adams said the Sinn Féin office is monitored from an army post, and he said photographs taken from there during and after yesterday's incident should be released. Towards the end of the news conference, a case was produced. This is said to have been carried by the off-duty police officer when he gained entry to the Republican Press Centre. Inside the case were 3 spent shotgun cartridges, and there was an exit hole in the case. Sinn Féin said it was found in their offices this morning, and Gerry Adams said the discovery indicated the careless nature of the forensic examination that had been carried out. It was also confirmed today that the police officer who later killed himself tricked his way into the Falls Road office by posing as a reporter. According to Sinn Féin, he sat for a while in the waiting room before opening fire. The doorman at the centre, Paddy Loughran, died close to the entrance of the office. According to the Sinn Féin account, Michael O'Dwyer was shot here, and Sinn Féin worker Paddy McBride died close by at the door of an adjoining office. The gunman fired on another Sinn Féin worker here, and he remains critically ill in hospital. Sinn Féin say a woman grappled with the gunman as he left the office but was shaken off. Today, the Secretary of State gave his first response to the events of yesterday, and he said he didn't see the attack as a slur on the RUC.
Of course, one deplores events such as the ones that unfolded, the tragedy that unfolded yesterday. But I would not say that that constituted a grounds for any slur upon the security forces at large.
The RUC hasn't responded to comments made at today's Sinn Féin news conference, but it's understood the police now have the bag and spent cartridges that were put on show by Gerry Adams.
The family of Constable Alan Moore, who carried out yesterday's attack, today said they were devastated and offered their sympathy to the families of the bereaved. But in commenting on the murders, others have also talked of the stress faced by members of the RUC. Jane Dodge reports.
Alan Moore had spent most of his short career as a member of a quick response unit, a job which meant he policed areas where he was in constant danger. In 1989, he narrowly missed being killed in a drogue bomb attack in Armagh. He was given an award for his bravery. According to one academic, Constable Moore's job in a divisional mobile support unit would have put him under huge pressures.
People in the DMSU, well, then it's a very, very narrow form of policing. Greater exposure to danger, greater likelihood of developing quite warped mindsets in which the main enemy becomes the terrorist.
But Alan Moore's actions yesterday, the murder of 3 people and then his suicide, have shocked both his employees and his family. The police have defended their role. They say he had seemed depressed after the death of a friend. He'd been arrested for firing shots over his colleague's grave, and his revolver was taken. But they had no reason to suspect anything more, and so he was released.
I hope that in the fullness of time, when the dust, so to speak, dies down on this incident, that the RUC will not be judged as a whole, that the 12,000 men and 800 women forming this organisation will not be judged by the actions of a person whom I'm not a doctor, simply a layman, consider to have suffered a certain type of insanity and acted as a murderer.
The parents of Alan Moore, who live in Ballymena, have told their minister that they're bewildered by the actions of their only son. They say he showed no signs of unusual behaviour when they last saw him on Sunday.
They're appalled by what he has done. And in some way, as they go through their growing grief, they know something of what those other three families are going through, and they simply would want to convey to those three families their sympathy. They just cannot understand what has happened.
There's still a sense of outrage amongst people in West Belfast, but according to a local priest, it's been tempered by the knowledge that the murders were the actions of a man who was disturbed.
When news came that that a policeman who was deranged was responsible, I think that diffused the situation. And I think people, especially when they have time to reflect on it, will realise that this was something which happened as a result of somebody being deeply disturbed.
30 detectives are now investigating the killings. There's also a review of the support system offered to those officers under stress.
The funerals have been taking place today of a Catholic taxi driver and a Protestant baker murdered in separate attacks earlier in the week. At a requiem mass in Belfast, a bishop said the city was shrouded in gloom, death and near despair. Tim Cook reports.
At the first funeral, 6 black taxis driven by Paddy Clark's colleagues led the cortege from the Holy Family Church at Newington onto the Antrim Road. His widow and children followed. Mrs. Clark was in the family home at Rosemont Gardens on Sunday night when the killers struck, shooting her husband as he watched television. Paddy Clark was 52 and well known for his interest in Gaelic culture. The UFF said that they killed him. At Requiem Mass this morning, a bishop condemned the spiral of murder.
The murderers, the arsonists, the bombers are plaguing us. They are plunging us more and more into what seems to be a fathomless pit of agonising darkness.
Dr. Walsh also expressed sympathy to the family of Gordon Hamill, whose funeral took place in Dungannon this afternoon. Mr. Hamill, a 42-year-old Protestant baker, was shot by the IRA on Monday. Hundreds attended a service at St Anne's Church of Ireland in the town centre.
Against the background of this week's attacks, the new moderator of the Presbyterian Church in Ireland has called for an end to all terrorist violence in the province. The Reverend John Dunlop, a minister of Rosemary Presbyterian Church in North Belfast, was elected last night. He's pledged to try to foster good relations between the Protestant and Catholic communities. He takes up his position in June and he joins me now in the studio. Mr. Dunlop, it's hard to think of what one can say constructively at a time like this. You've appealed for an end to all violence. Do you think, generally speaking, the people who are perpetrating these outrages, as people call them, will listen to the voice of the churches?
Well, I think the churches have got to say what is right. If the church ever stops saying that, then it'll go by default and people will start to think that violence is justified, whereas this violence is outrageous. Nothing can justify it. And I think more and more voices in the community, along with the churches, have to be raised against it. The ICTU rally yesterday was a voices raised against this kind of violence. And the voices have got to be against provisional IRA violence and UFF violence. They are both equally unacceptable in this community.
But do you think that communities are withdrawing into each other, or are they, as you've asked for, trying to trust each other across ancient lines of rupture? Is there any evidence that that's happening?
Yes, I think there's evidence that they are reaching out across these ancient lines of rupture. Now, it may not be reaching to the people who are doing the violence, but other members of the community are in fact attempting to do that. And we have got to foster a political process which will eventually deliver some kind of political progress. And that has to be across these ancient lines of rupture.
Mr. Dunlop, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
2 Royal Marines have been in court in Belfast accused of the murder of Fergal Carraher and the attempted murder of his brother Micheál in South Armagh in December 1990. The 2 Marines are also charged with wounding Micheál Carraher with intent to do him grievous bodily harm. Fergal Carraher was shot dead when soldiers opened fire on a car in which he was travelling. Both soldiers deny the charges.
The 2 soldiers are from 45 Royal Marine Commando, and Belfast Magistrates Court heard that they'd both been charged this morning. They are Marine Andrew Michael Callaghan, aged 20, and Marine Richard Elkington, aged 23. An RUC detective inspector told the court that when charged, both men had replied not guilty to each charge. They were remanded into military custody.
certain to be the next Irish Prime Minister, says that he hopes political structures can be established to accommodate all Irish men and women. Mr Reynolds has been talking to our political editor Jim Dougal, who first asked him how much of a priority Northern Ireland would be in a Reynolds administration.
There is a real danger here that we could be dulled into a free acceptance of the violence and the death and the destruction that's taking place up there because it's happening so frequently. We cannot afford, no matter how busy we are in other areas, to ignore something that is a cancer in our society, that is destroying both North and South. And indeed, there is a necessity to try and initiate whatever process has to be initiated. And I know that the impending general election has set the Peterborough initiative aside for the moment, but I would be certainly keeping it up there to try and find some structures, maybe in the European context or whatever, to look for new structures that probably can try and accommodate and get peace in some shape or form back into that society. Because I want to see the communities coming together, and I don't want to see domination by one section over another, but partnership between us all.
Unionists would, of course, say to you that there can be no constructive relationship between Northern Ireland and the Republic until Articles 2 and 3 of the Irish Constitution are removed. What's your response to that?
I have the height of respect for unionists, and I hope the unions have the height of respect for me. They're tough people. They believe and stand up for what they believe in. And I also believe that they have the same self-respect or the same respect for people who do likewise, who do not see eye to eye with them. And I believe, and I think the example was that when the Catholic Church had a special position in our constitution that was taken off, it was supposed to be a big obstacle when it was there. And yet I remember quite clearly on the night it was taken out that everybody, union spokespeople said, look, it was never an issue anyway. In relation to Articles 2 and 3, I believe, as the present Taoiseach and the present government believe, that in an all-Ireland context, sitting around the table, that everything should be on the table then, and let's discuss everything, the total relationships and everything else that's relevant. But I would say quite clearly that I do not believe that Articles 2 and 3 should be taken out in advance of that.
You've talked earlier about the violence and the killing and the upsurge in IRA violence and also in the violence of loyalist paramilitaries. How do you think that the two governments should respond to that?
Well, I've always believed that in relation to guerrilla warfare can succeed and can flourish only and when the local populations give succour and protection and give them the opportunity of hiding from the forces of law and order. I believe that on whichever side you look, that if that situation was not there, then, as I say, guerrilla warfare, and that's what I call the violence up there. It is guerrilla warfare, in my honest opinion. So you get into those areas first, and you try and look into people's minds and try and find out why. And then you try and solve the solution, not in isolation of the cause, but looking at the cause in the first instance. And that's where I believe you have to start. And if you can try and make inroads there into that particular area, then I think you're taking the first steps to trying to eliminate guerrilla warfare.